Hi, it's Dave here, and this is my wife, Cathy.
Hello.
And this is the Cinemile, the podcast where we walk home from the movies, but forget movies.
This
Today,
is a bonus TV episode.
it's all about TV. So we've already done our best movies of 2019 episode, which you can go listen to on the feed right now. So this is an extra little episode we like to do every year where we look back at the year's TV and sort of patch together a top 5 list.
Yeah, and we love doing TV reviews. We do this. We've done this the last couple of years, and we also did episodic Game of Thrones at one point. And so much so did we enjoy doing TV reviews that we now do them monthly over on our Patreon.
Yes, in our bonus podcast, the Cinemile High Club, over at patreon.com/the Cinemile.
So a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about now, apologies if you're a patron, you'd have already heard us talking about them, but we've done some really in-depth reviews, so we'll name the ones we've done really long reviews on if you want to go and listen to them on Patreon. But right now what we're going to talk about is we each have a top 5 TV show of the year.
Yeah, so
as always, our lists are secret from each other.
Yeah. Although I'm pretty sure I can guess yours.
Oh, I mean, yeah, we know what shows.
I'm pretty sure there's a lot of crossover
I'm sure
here.
There's a lot of crossover. All right, so number 5 for me is a show we actually binge watched on New Year's Day of this year. I think it might have been out in the States last year. It came out in the UK this year. It was Escape at Dannemora. Absolutely love that TV show.
I forgot about that.
Do you know what I've been doing?
Frantically writing it on my list.
I always, Dave, you can't add it to your list.
No,
Stop.
it's on my honourable mentions.
Dave, does this. He tries to modify his list as he listens to me, which is completely cheating.
It's so much TV now. It's hard to remember.
But do you know what I did this year for the
great.
first time? Because every year we never need to keep track of what movies we've watched because it's in the podcast feed. But I always find the TV ones difficult because I can't remember what we've watched. So since 1st of January this year, my friend, I've been keeping a list, which is how Escape at Dannemora did not escape me because it would have otherwise.
Oh, nice.
Anyway,
that's my New Year's resolution.
Escape at Dannemora was a HBO show that we watched on...
No, it was Showtime, I thought.
Oh, Showtime!
Yeah.
Yes, you're right, Showtime. We watched it on Sky Atlantic. It's a wonderful show. It's directed by Ben Stiller, who never knew he was a good director. Turns out he's brilliant. Stars Benicio del Toro, Paul... Dano and Patricia Arquette, so 3 amazing actors, and it's based on a real story that I had never heard of, so half the fun when we finished this was then YouTubing all the real people, and I think it was only 8 episodes, but it was basically about 2 men escaping from prison, and they were kind of inadvertently helped by this woman played by Patricia Arquette, and it is such a thrilling TV show. Oh my god, the escape stuff is phenomenal. The actors are amazing, and it is some binge. Like, I mean, honestly, you cannot turn this show off. So I completely recommend you go and watch Escape at Dannemora if you haven't already, because it's truly a wonderful piece of TV. And Ben Stiller, never knew you had it in you.
Oh, there's some the way he presents some of these episodes in terms of the storytelling and the visuals.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Is wonderful. There's this one take thing down the down a tunnel in which I'm like, how did he actually do that? It goes up a ladder,
stylish,
and I don't think there's any CG involved.
It's brilliant, and it's an interesting one. Like, it's a really good one to go and watch the YouTube clips afterwards, because the real people involved, like, there's some like TV interviews with them, and it does need to be said that there was some issues. The woman Patricia Arquette plays, she came out hard against this and was not happy about her portrayal, so it's always kind of worth reflecting on that as well. Who knows where the truth lies? But Patricia Arquette is like the performance of a career for her, isn't it? It's unbelievable.
As well as the actor whose name escapes me now, but he plays her husband in it. And
he's brilliant.
He is amazing and is transformed. It's one of those actual transformational
roles. It's what they do with prosthetic teeth, and they completely change an actor's face.
So much so that I didn't. He's a recognisable actor and a very good one. And when I looked it up, I was like, I did not believe it. I was like, that's not that actor. It cannot be.
No, so go and catch Escape at Dannemora if you haven't already. Dave, what's your number 5?
My number 5 of this year is something that has been my number 1 for many years, and it's BoJack Horseman. And this is a testament. No, but this is the thing, right? This show has not decreased in quality. If anything, it only continues to improve. Really, this is just a testament to how fucking good my top 4 is.
TV,
damn.
For the record, this is probably one of the best years of TV I've ever seen in my life.
Unbelievable. The amount
way better than the movies.
Oh god, amazing shows we got this year. Like, my top 5 are possibly like my top 5 shows of the last decade.
And the fact
year.
that you forgot about Escape at Dannemora, which is incredible, because you've seen so many incredible things since.
That's amazing, but still doesn't crack my top 5. Had I remembered that it happened.
Yeah, Dave, don't pretend you factored it in.
But my number 5 is BoJack Horseman. We only got the first half of the final season of BoJack Horseman this year on Netflix. But what a half it was, and I can't wait for the rest of it in January. This show just kills me. It is so heartbreaking. Every season, these are the most human animals you'll ever see. They are, and even the human characters are human. The animal characters are human. They're recognisable. It's bittersweet. It's very contemplative about life and why we do the things we do and why we self-destruct. What causes that? Do you inherit these things? It's not just a silly animated cartoon with a load of hilarious puns, but it is also that.
It's so funny because I don't watch it, albeit I've seen some of it with Dave. And to just walk by the telly when you're watching it, it's like you're just watching this surreal, absurd like animation, but in fact it's like really deep. But so that's quite fascinating, that dichotomy.
And it balances the two so well. But it is absurd. It is absolutely absurdist. Like for example, in the last season, there's a whole plot. This isn't really a spoiler, where a sex robot becomes the head of a company, and just has a giant dildo on at the end of a broomstick for the entire thing. That is ridiculous, but it's also hilarious. Anyway, I love that show so much. I recommend it every year, and I hope someone's listening to me and has climbed aboard that show, because it is worth it.
You have recommended it a lot, I have to say. And he was recently recommending it on our Patreon, and I was like, you know what, Dave, I think they get it. Right, so my number 4 of the year, knocked it out of the park for me after a very poor previous season, was Veep final season.
Yes, that was
Absolutely love this show. It's HBO, we watch it on Sky Atlantic. And Veep was a show we've always both loved, but it really went downhill, and so much so that the second last season actually stopped watching it, because I thought, you know what, I don't need to watch bad comedy. I get it, it's terrible, I'm not watching it. But because it was the final season, I thought, I'll come back, I'll see what it's like. And it was truly, truly wonderful ending to the series. I really don't think they could have done a better job on the finale episode. The cast is so incredible. Like Julia Louis-Dreyfus, unbelievable. Everyone else, so great. In particular, God, what's his name? Buster from Arrested Development.
Gary
plays Gary in this. I cannot remember the actor's name, but him and Julia Louis-Dreyfus together are just so wonderful. Everyone, I'm not going to name check all the actors because there's too many good ones to mention. The writing in this show is so fast, like you can't even keep up with the jokes. Like, you'll watch an episode and afterwards when we talk about it, we'll have both picked up on different jokes, because sometimes jokes are actually overlaying jokes within the same sentences.
It's
I'm not clever enough to actually follow it.
It's at an insane pace, that show.
The pace is amazing, and it's totally back on form. And honestly, in terms of a series finale, it's probably one of the best ones I've ever seen in terms of finishing a show. I think they did an incredible job on it.
Yeah, it's very satisfying from a character point of view.
Yeah, I would say if you did give up on Veep, just go back and watch the last season. Don't bother watching ones before that, because it's truly, truly enjoyable.
If you're looking for a good quality HBO show that ends in a satisfying way, but you didn't find that this year elsewhere, then recommend trying it here.
Yeah, so go and watch Veep. Right, Dave, what's your number 4?
My number 4 of the year is Fleabag by Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
Oh, that's my number 3, so let's just chat it together.
Great, okay. Well, what serendipitous timing. Jesus, this is season 2 of this show.
And season end.
Oh my God, what a drop the mic move.
Yeah, do it. That's the best way to end a show.
Leave them wanting more, and that's all I want.
That's all anyone.
I want more.
Fleabag had an actual so it's a BBC show that we both watch on BBC over here, and it's influenced culture so much that there's like drinks in it, like an M&S pre-made gin and tonic.
In a can.
The sales for that went up by an exorbitant amount the following week, right? Apparently,
because Andrew Scott, the hot priest, was
apparently there's been a huge increase in people searching for. Women searching for like priests in porn. I was reading about the cultural impact of this. It's unbelievable.
That's funny.
So funny. But yeah, honestly, what a phenomenon. Like, every week we were just waiting to watch it, weren't we? Like, dying to see it.
But every week we were surprised. And also, like, rarely you're just watching a show and just thinking to yourself, like, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
This is the best thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
This is just an amazing bit of television, an amazing bit of writing.
Amazing acting from Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Like, she writes it, created it, stars in it. Like, it's all her. And hats off to her, because she's now been basically given millions and millions of dollars by Amazon to go make stuff for them, and I think that's awesome because she's brilliant. But she does this amazing thing where she very intimately invites viewers into her inner narrative, because she's looking at the camera like you're her friend and you're her confidant. You feel like, as a viewer, it's really breaking the fourth wall. It's amazing. But
it's breaking the fourth wall. Breaking the fourth wall can be very troublesome, I think. You get it in House of Cards, and that tends to be very, for me, like pantomime-y.
Though that is intentional in House of Cards.
And you get it in incidentally, I just read this morning that Kevin Spacey's released another House of Cards style Christmas video
we need to watch
as the character.
Now we need to stop the podcast.
Mortifying that he's doing that. And you get it in things like Deadpool, where it's played for laughs. But you're bang on. She uses the fourth wall in as a punchline to gags with just a look. I've never seen an actress do something like this, or any actor, where she just like, another character will say something and she'll just look, give this little look to camera, and it's like you and her are in on this joke.
Yeah.
And it's funny and intimate.
Funny. And again, it's undone that thing of only having six half-hour episodes. So doesn't overstay its welcome. No. I mean, in fact, we were begging for more. The character of her sister.
The supporting characters in this are so good.
Her and her sister are
Olivia
just joy.
Colman is in this.
Yeah. Olivia Colman, post Oscar for The Favourite, is in this. She won the Oscar, didn't she?
She did last year, yeah.
Basically, Andrew Scott is now the man of every woman's fantasies. The sister and her, just the scene where the sister goes and get her hair cut is just so funny.
Oh, so good.
But it does, really deals with sadness as well, and loss, particularly, they've lost their mother, and it did come under some criticism this year, because, and last time it was on too, because Phoebe Waller-Bridge herself comes from a very privileged background, obviously a privileged white woman, and the show, everyone in the show is rich and very privileged. But I don't know that that's a reason to criticise her, because yes, she is really privileged, but she's a fucking genius, and her privilege has nothing to do with how good a writer she is and how good an actress she is.
But everyone writes from their own experience.
And not every show.
Often the best writers do. And what about Richard Curtis? I mean, he does get criticised for that.
He does get criticised, but not every show can represent everything. And what this show, I think, did really well is representing a single woman's experience in her 30s in London, and that's the experience to take away from it. It's not, she's not trying to represent other things, and she received way more criticism than a man would have who made a similar show, to be quite frank. So I think it's, I love her, and I'm so pleased she's doing so well. And not to mention the fact that she bloody created Killing Eve as well, you know what I mean? She's on some role, and now she's a scriptwriter on they brought her in to basically fix the new James Bond script, apparently.
She's incredible and deserves all that success. But the reason this show is so good, it's not because it's not a love story between a woman and a priest, or a woman and someone else. It isn't.
You did really want them to get together, didn't
obviously,
you?
And that's a crucial part of it. But it's a love story between Fleabag. We don't never know the character's name, which is
so
a stroke
cool.
of genius.
Yeah, amazing.
It's a love story between her and herself. This is somebody who,
and her sister.
And her sister, but it's mainly somebody who, it's about loving yourself. She despises herself for the whole first season, and then the second season is her redemption in a way, or at least her forgiving herself.
I just love what she's done in ending it. It's like The Office ended after 2 seasons, or Fawlty Towers ended after 12
genius.
episodes.
But not
how
only,
do you do it?
Not that first season was so good, and to come out with an even better one that informs the first and then ends on such a high, I'm it's a genius bit of TV and deserves to go down in history.
Yeah,
anyway,
amazing.
Done. What's your number?
That was my number 3.
Oh wait, no, I should do my number 3
So you do
now.
your number 3 now.
So my top 2, my 3 and 2 were kind of hopping around a bit.
Same, I found this really difficult, and I think we probably have all the same shows.
I think so. And to be honest, this show was at number 2 until we finished it last night. Ooh. And it slipped down to number 3 a little bit, because for me end was ever so slightly unsatisfying, but as a whole, completely untarnished. And it's Watchmen, the HBO Damon Lindelof's sequel to Watchmen, the 1980s iconic graphic novel series by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. And Dave Gibbons, who is a co-writer and illustrator of the books, was heavily involved in this project as a consultant. Alan Moore famously wants nothing to do with any of his adaptations and has, after some very bad experiences in Hollywood. This is a book which I personally love. I read it about 15 years ago and became kind of obsessed with it, and read it again recently. And I don't tend to reread things. I'm not much of a reader personally.
Dave reads about 2 books a year. So
I do.
For you to reread something's a really big deal.
I just wanted to go back to it last year, and I didn't even know this thing was happening. And then I saw this thing was happening, the TV show, and I just kind of groaned inwardly, and I'm like, whoa, what is this? Why, like, leave it alone. It's an unadaptable thing in many ways, and Zack Snyder made a movie of Watchmen, which I actually think was Zack Snyder gets a lot of crap, but I think he did actually a good job of just literally bringing that thing to life in his own style, and he told that story, and it's a bit of a mixed bag, but he did it, but without any sort of understanding of that story or what made it work and what made it tick. Enter Damon Lindelof and his writing team, who looked at this thing and looked at what Watchmen was at its core, and how do you take that and how do you translate it to now, and what it can tell us about modern society. And the thing they chose really to laser down on was race, and particularly race issues in the US. And they center it, this isn't a spoiler, but the show opens with an actual incident that happened in Tulsa in the 1920s, which I did not even know was a real thing.
I didn't know about it either.
In which a town which was described at the time as the Black Wall Street, a very prosperous black town, was completely destroyed by the Ku Klux Klan, who murdered most of the inhabitants of that town. That's how this show starts, and that's a statement, and it's shocking and horrifying.
Shocking. And we were watching it, and we were like, wait, this is Watchmen, what's happening?
Yeah,
and like the show continued to surprise us.
And that's exactly why this show is my number 3 of the year.
It's not in my top 5, but like it's up there in terms of great shows for me this year. I think it's wonderful.
It is surprising, non-stop. Every episode feels different to the one that came before. Like they tell, and they've introduced a lot of new characters while also bringing in the old characters from the show. So it's very much a sequel in many ways, while also being an entirely new story. And a hint to everyone else who wants to take an old 80s property and do a Lego sequel like The Force Awakens. This is how you do it. This is not a retread. It's taking all the things that made that thing so good and doing it again with a different story and different characters, while also not bringing the old characters along. And not only that, adding to the original text. There's an episode which I won't spoil in this, but it's number 6, which is one of the best. I think it's the single best episode of TV I've seen this year.
In terms of
just an episode, yeah.
Yeah, that was amazing. That was when I was like, okay, I'm finally with the show, because up until that point I've been kind of enjoying it, watching it with Dave, and then that episode happened and I went, oh my god, this is amazing.
It's incredible, but it also adds to the original book. It makes it better and it makes it more rich.
I mean, that's really incredible. But we are going to do a big review of Watchmen over on our Patreon, full of spoilers. So head over there if you want to listen to that. Head over there,
because I'll talk about this all day otherwise.
Yeah, I'm literally cutting Dave off.
Sorry, go on. What's your number 2?
My number 2 is, but yes, agree, absolutely loved Watchmen, just not in my top 5. My number 2, I really struggled between number 2 and number 1, okay? And I bounced back and forth in them.
I think we've got the same number 2 and number 1.
I would say so.
But carry on.
But maybe different orders.
And I also struggled.
I really bounced back and forth. But my number 2 of the year is one that we did our biggest ever TV review of over on our Patreon, was Succession Season 2. Is that your number 2 as well?
No, my number 2 is Chernobyl.
And is your number one Succession?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, my number one's Chernobyl. Okay,
Right.
let's just talk about Succession now, right? So
I struggled as well. It was kind
really
of
hard.
Ultimately, I just couldn't let Logan Roy, L to the OG, slip away out of the top spot.
Okay, we'll just chat through Succession then. So Succession is my number 2, Dave's number 1, and as I say, we recorded like well over an hour.
Yeah, no, we did. We chatted about this show for 2 hours.
Was it 2 hours?
Yes, it's a 2-hour episode over on the Patreon. So if you want more of what we're about to do, go over there. And also, sorry. Firstly, I'm non-stop recommending this to everyone all the time. Like, this was the year that Succession really arrived, I think, in terms of, I think it's like on the tipping point of cultural relevance.
Yeah.
I think
it's huge. It was like number one trend on Twitter every week.
And I think enough people now will catch up between now and season 3 to the point where it's going to just tip over the edge and skyrocket. I just know it. This show is insanely good.
It's so good. And I think last year, both of us had Succession season 1, either in our first or second places.
It was number 1 for me last year.
Yeah, I think it was number 2 for me last year. So, like, we are hardcore Succession fans here. So, kind of briefly, for anyone who doesn't know what Succession is, it's a story about a very wealthy family. So, the dad, Logan Roy, L to the OG, who is kind of a Rupert Murdoch type figure, and his 4 children, who are kind of Murdoch type figures, who kind of are part of this media empire basically, and the dad owns everything from like theme parks to news channels, etc. So very much in the Murdoch vein, Disney vein. And this show follows their relationships, and key follows the fight for succession. The children all want to be top dog. They don't just want to run the company, but what they're really trying to all fight for is the dad's affection.
Yes,
and
approval.
The dad is a monster.
Played by Brian Cox, Logan Roy.
Wonderful in this. Truly unbelievable performance from Brian Cox. Truly unbelievable performance.
There's not a weak link in this cast.
Oh my God, I shouldn't even talk about Succession, because what happens to me is I just gush, and that's why when we recorded our big 2-hour review of it over on Patreon, we kind of actually we watched the whole season, and then we went through character by character and discussed each character's plot points, so we won't do that now. But honestly, it's phenomenal, and I really couldn't recommend it anymore. Both seasons have, I think, only 10 episodes, so if you haven't caught it, an absolute easy binge. Go for it. The theme music to this show is like...
It's like crack.
It's like
it never gets out of your head.
Like, I hear this music and I'm like, ah! It's just unbelievable. And they did so much in season 2 to evolve the music, and there's this incredible video. Was it on Vanity Fair?
Vanity Fair did it.
And
yeah.
It's the composer of the music talks through how he constructed it and how he adapts it for different characters. And the music is a character of the show, not to sound cheesy, but the music is something else. There's also an amazing rapping scene in season 2 that this guy wrote, and it's just... Honestly, every time you watch it, you're like, who's better than the last? Now, for anyone who hasn't seen it, and common consensus that I agree with is that the pilot's a bit grim and the second episode's a bit grim. Get to episode 3 of season 1 before you decide whether you're going to watch it or not, because lots of people give up in the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, agreed. We've spoken to a lot of people who have come back to us since on Twitter saying thanks for the recommendation, went back to it, stuck with it, and now they're on the journey.
Yeah, so go for it. Watch Succession.
There's a little bit of... You got to push through the first few episodes a little bit. Not that they're bad, but I think I agree with Cathy. And you had a similar feeling.
Well, they're a little bit depressing because you're like, these people are so selfish.
They're horrible people. But and that doesn't change. You don't learn... You kind of do learn to love them in a way, but they are still horrible.
But you're suddenly totally rooted in what's going on.
But what happens is the more time you spend with them, because of the writing by Jesse Armstrong is so strong,
and the actors are so wonderful.
You understand them, yeah. But it's this perfect marriage of writing and performance where these people, they are real to me, and I understand them intimately. And
they're real to me, and they're my friends. They're horrible friends who bully me.
I would hate
my friends.
these people to be in my life.
But out of interest, so why did Succession beat Chernobyl for you? Well, I tell you why Chernobyl beat Succession for me.
Well, do you? So you asked me a question and then said,
"No, I'm just curious."
Tell you the answer.
Like, do you have an answer, or was it just that they jumped back and forth and you eventually settled on one?
For me, I think the reason I landed on this was in terms of I had more emotional impact from Succession, and I'm more invested in the characters of Succession. But if you were to ask me which is the better TV show, I still can't answer that question.
Yeah, the reason
possibly Chernobyl is probably a greater achievement and maybe has more to say about life because it's so rooted in real events.
Yeah, that's why Chernobyl in the end won for me, because Chernobyl, another HBO show. What a year HBO show have. In our top 5 we've got Succession, Watchmen, Chernobyl.
That's my top 3.
Veep. Is that 4? We've got 4 out of our top 5s are HBO. Like, for unbelievable.
For a company that everyone was expecting, was associating with Game of Thrones for the longest time.
Yeah, and notably Game of Thrones ain't on this list.
Notably absent. But I think they're going to be fine.
I mean, they're the best. Like, there's now Chernobyl was co-produced by Sky, but it is also HBO. The reason Chernobyl made it to number 1 for me is because I think it's a stunning achievement beyond what a truly wonderful show it is. And again, we've done a really long episode on this over on our Patreon, but it took 5 years to make. It's only 5 episodes, so that shows you the level of care that went into this show.
Sorry, Oscar's now awake, so we're gonna come back to Cathy's Chernobyl thoughts in a bit.
As much as toddlers love listening to us talking about
Oscar.
Chernobyl.
Okay, we'll come back in it shortly.
Chernobyl is on fire. And every atom of uranium is like a bullet, penetrating everything in its path. Metal, concrete, flesh. Now Chernobyl holds over 3 trillion of these bullets. Some of them will not stop firing for 50,000 years.
Tell me how to put it out.
You are dealing with something that has never occurred on this planet before.
Hi, we're back. Time has passed.
Time has passed, and we are back to continue talking about Chernobyl, my number 1 TV show of the year, and Dave's number 2 TV show of the year.
Yeah, thanks for the quick recap. I mean, it just happened for them.
It's a recap for me because we were discussing it yesterday, and I'm trying to remember where I was. So I think I was saying that it took 5 years to make. It is only 5 episodes, and what a 5-episode show it is. So good that I actually bought my dad the DVD of it for Christmas, which is something I do very often. And it's just exquisitely crafted, and for me it's the best show of the year, if not maybe the decade, honestly, because of how it treats the subject matter is so considered and fascinating, and there's so much research has gone into this show. And honestly, I felt like I could manage a nuclear reactor after watching it. I felt so knowledgeable about nuclear energy, and how they construct the show is there's kind of 5, as I said, 5 episodes, and there's kind of 5 stories we're following throughout. But you don't really find out what happened in the reactor until the very end, and by that point you've been on this journey with a show, and it's explained so well that it's so compelling. And for somebody to be able to explain nuclear energy, and as well as everything else, in such an entertaining way, you're like on the edge of your seat as you learn about this reactor, right? So it's just wonderful. I felt really knowledgeable afterwards. It's also just historically something, aside from the nuclear energy stuff, I had never, of course I knew about the Chernobyl disaster, but I had never known of the impact on the people in that country, in surrounding countries, different people that, you know, we were introduced through the course of this, like the firefighters, the first responders, oh my god, the miners, the engineers, the everyday people. The impact that this had was so extraordinary. And also it's a really good study of the Soviet Union, and it's truly wonderful. And after every episode, the creator Craig Mason has a podcast called the Chernobyl Podcast, which was an official one. And he goes deep dives into the facts behind the episode, and how they made it, and how they drew inspiration from it. And it all started for him, like years and years ago. He just Googled one day, what happened in Chernobyl? Why did it explode? Because he realised he didn't know the answer to it. And he spent the whole night kind of on Wikipedia reading about it, and thought this would make a really interesting show. And And that in itself is just amazing, how the creative process can start. Something as small as someone sitting on Wikipedia and bringing something like this out at this quality of acting is amazing. But at the end of the day, it's really entertaining, and I think that's what good TV needs to be. And I couldn't, we never watched more than one episode in a row because we found it very intense. I know some people who binged it, and hats off, I could not have done that. But Dave, why is it your number 2?
I think what you mentioned about the podcast is really relevant because that enhanced this show even more. It really did. For me. It was like getting a DVD commentary bolted on. So after each episode, we'd listen to the podcast, and you'd get it just furthered your understanding of what you saw, and made the show even better because you realise, because you're told, the amount of attention to detail that Craig Mazin put into, and the production design team and everybody, the actors put into this, down to and that's why this show is so good. It's attention to detail.
Exquisite. The
uniforms that the firefighters are wearing are actual uniforms that were worn in the USSR at that time. Like the wardrobe department sourced that, the props department sourced all this stuff. They shot the nearby town that was most affected by Chernobyl. They shot in a somewhere in the Ukraine, which was almost identical, had identical buildings to what would have been there at the time. Like, they put a stupid amount of care, and stupid is the wrong word, but a ridiculous amount of care and attention to telling that story in the most accurate way they could, and it shows. So what you get is, you get a show that's just lovingly crafted and recreated, so feels authentic. I think, as you said, it makes you feel smarter because I felt
so smart, which I don't often feel informed on any intellectual level by any shows we watch. I can feel entertained or whatever, but this, I felt like genuinely enhanced my knowledge as a human.
Well, because it's not afraid to give you the detail. It's like watching a documentary series about it, and you can trust. You feel like, because they put the work in, you feel like you can trust it as a source. And any sort of fictionalized elements they explain, such as multiple characters being rolled into one person, and that's kind of forgivable and necessary. And
again, that's through the podcast, and it's quite fascinating. Obviously, TV accompaniment podcasts are the biggest thing now. But there's another podcast now that Craig Mazin does, which is the Watchmen podcast, and with Damon Lindelof, and Craig Mazin's hosting this one, and he says basically HBO asked him to do it because the Chernobyl podcast had over 10 million downloads. I think the number he said was, so I mean, a little bit lower than what the Cinema Island of Fear tends to get, but still not bad. But everyone who watched it legitimately went and listened to the podcast because it was like you needed that extra. It was no, but that's the,
you don't actually need it. It's icing, but it's
but
icing
you're hungry
that
for
makes
it.
The cake taste better.
Because after every episode, I was and like any true adaptation of something from real life, you are hungry for the detail afterwards.
Yes,
you want to know, was that character real? Did this really happen?
That's what's so good about that podcast. We're just reviewing the podcast now, but you're basically it's the audio equivalent of the Google search everyone does after watching a true story.
Yeah,
you
or
get
the
it,
YouTube searches after Escape at Dannemora.
Exactly, you get it all delivered to you perfectly. But I think the other thing that's so good about this show is that Craig Mazin has something to say. There's a thematic through line of the whole thing of what is the cost of lies. And that he speaks on the podcast about that. Not at the time he wrote this, fake news wasn't a topic. None of the sort of the way truth has been eroded in today's age wasn't relevant. But
Russian interference in US elections.
Well, exactly, but it could not feel more relevant, this show, because it's all, and it all winds back, without spoiling anything, it all winds back to one or two small lies that escalate. And then when you have an institution with the USSR that compounds lies and protects the hides the truth to protect themselves, and it's the cost of that is staggering. And the other interesting thing is just about the USSR as an institution, Soviet Russia. He also describes that the USSR is the only place, an institution that could have created the circumstances that led to Chernobyl, but they're also the only people that could have dealt with it, because the human cost that was required to stop this thing is something that if you had happened in Britain or America at the same time, you may not have had the same level of people that they were just willing to throw their lives at this thing. Yeah. That's not to say that may have happened, but this is people who...
It's like the army. You need people to obey you in certain circumstances.
Yeah, but it is the army, but if everyone was conscripted.
Yeah.
And like they just did it without thought or question and proudly. So it's just a brilliant show. Go listen, go watch it if you haven't seen it. We can't recommend it enough. Also, Jared Harris is amazing in it.
Yeah,
right,
phenomenal. Okay, so that's our top 5.
We did it.
All
right, on to our honourable mentions.
Yes.
Let's just reel off a load of these without chatting too long, because look how many I have.
Oh my God, Dave!
I watched a lot of TV.
That's insane. Okay, so you better reel them off. Right, honourable mentions. What's your first one?
First one is Mindhunter, which I presume you have as well.
That's on my list as well.
This is a show that season 2 of this almost made my top 5 as well. It was hard. Like, there's so much good TV this year.
And this is a Netflix show, another Netflix show.
Won't talk too long, but again, not to bang on about our Patreon, but we did a whole episode on Mindhunter season 2 if you do want to listen to that. Patreon.com/the cinema. This is a show, if you don't know what it is, it's about the another true life retelling that's been fictionalized about the foundations of, or the forming of, the first ever criminal behavioural unit in the FBI. So basically what the Criminal Minds
It's the origin story of the Criminal Minds.
Yeah, essentially.
But yeah, it's a really wonderful show. It's set in the 70s. Has 2 wonderful leads, Jonathan Groff and what's the other guy?
I don't know. You've walked into this one.
And Anna Torv.
Robert Paulson from Fight Club.
Yeah. Anyway,
who is brilliant.
Doesn't matter. They're brilliant actors. It's a brilliant setting, and it's a really interesting take on kind of the true crime murder mystery genre, because the kind of core case in season 2 is based on a real case. All the cases are based on real cases.
This one's the Atlanta Monster.
Yeah, which was
case,
a big podcast.
Which there's also a podcast.
Yeah, but anyway, we won't rattle on about Mindhunter season 2. But if that sounds up your alley, go watch it.
Watch Mindhunter. You also get a little bit of Charles Manson, played by the same guy that played Charles Manson in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, that was really weird.
He just got those 2 roles about the same time because he's reminiscent of him. But you get a lot of what this show is you get a lot of time in rooms with these guys interviewing famous serial killers, and the actors, the small bit part actors they bring in to play these serial killers are incredibly good. Holt McCallany is the name.
Okay, great. Well, he's really good. Okay.
And Anna Torv from Fringe is in it.
Yeah, I said her already. You were too busy Googling. Now, my honourable mention was it's basically my number 6 of the year is Catastrophe season 3. Catastrophe season 4, sorry, it's the 4th season. Dave and I have always watched it together, but this year he didn't catch up on time, so I watched it without him. It's the Channel 4 sitcom starring and created by Sharon Horgan and Rob Delaney, and it's 6 half-hour episodes. I think I watched them all in a day, maybe 2 days, because they're such an easy watch. But it's just a brilliant show set around a couple and kind of their lives that they navigate having children. And I completely recommend Catastrophe any year, any day. Love it.
I need to watch that. Next one on my list is Big Mouth. This is another animated Netflix exclusive show, which is just amazing. This is season 3 they're up to now, and it is consistently good and gets better and better. It's about basically a load of teenagers going through puberty in school, and it's very raunchy and funny and wacky, but also a bit like BoJack Horseman, touching and heartwarming. It's made by Nick Kroll, very good US comedian who brings a lot of his own awkward personal experience to it. If you need, I'll give you one reason to watch this show. To get to season 3, they did a whole episode which is about the kids hosting a musical version of the 1994 Michael Douglas Demi Moore movie Disclosure.
That sounds amazing.
Which is one of the best episodes of TV I saw this year, and that's Big Mouth. Go watch that.
Okay, and I watched Game Face Season 2, which was out this year, but I also watched Game Face Season 1 because I hadn't seen it. So all available on all four. Season 1 was on E4, Season 2 was on Channel 4. And it's created by and starring Roisin Conaty, who's a second generation Irish woman living in England. And it's just really funny. I really
And you met her
this.
recently?
I met her, yeah. I hosted a Q&A for the Irish Film Festival in London with her and Bridget Christie, the comedian, talking about what it's like to be second generation Irish woman in England, which was really interesting. But that's not why I like the show. I like the show because it's just really good. It honestly just makes me laugh. It's a really easy watch.
It's very funny.
It follows, a woman in her 30s living her life with some hilarious situations, really smart writing, and just, I loved it. I just like comedies that are a nice watch, that have interesting characters, and that are from a female perspective. And I really recommend Game Face if you haven't seen it.
My next one is His Dark Materials, the BBC/HBO adaptation of the Philip Pullman classic fantasy trilogy. I read these books when I was 15, kind of reluctantly at first, because I thought they were children's books, and when you're 15, that's not cool. But fell in love with them. Thought the Golden Compass movie 2007 was okay, but like not great. I think a lot of people felt like that, and so this came along. Felt like I've finished it now. It's a much more faithful adaptation of the book. It's got a great cast. So much. It's one of the best looking and biggest budget TV shows I've ever seen. I can't believe how they brought the demons to life. It's incredible.
Looks amazing.
And speaking of companion podcasts, there's one for that show as well. Well, there's several, but I did one with Helen O'Hara from Empire, and it's available on Spotify exclusively. It's called His Darker Materials, and we had loads of the cast on it. Where we had Daphne Keane, who plays Lyra, Ruth Wilson, who plays Mrs. Coulter, and one of my favourite episodes is the last one with Russell Dodgson, the head of the VFX team, who was a really great guy, and also just goes into detail about how they made the show, and it's incredibly interesting.
Okay, so
but it was a really, really good show. And the end of it, episode 8, was really hard hitting.
Okay, so head over to His Darker Materials if you want to hear more on that from Dave. And then another honourable mention for me is Shrill, which is another female-led comedy, which I just binged in like the last week on BBC. They just released it on iPlayer, and it's just a really good comedy again. 6 episodes about a woman. She's a journalist. She lives in America. She's overweight, and she receives horrendous everyday discrimination about her weight, and that's dealt with very sensitively, but it's also dealt with in a very funny way. So I totally recommend that you go and watch that one.
Rick and Morty is back for season 4, about 5 episodes in. I'm not going to talk too long about this. Everyone knows Rick and Morty at this stage, but it's really funny and I'm enjoying it.
It's usually in your top 5, isn't it?
It has been previously, yeah, but for me this is like just not as good as things like Big Mouth and BoJack, because it doesn't deliver. It can deliver that emotional weight, but it rarely does, and it's also a very cynical show. But it's insanely, it's probably the most intelligent and clever show on TV, if you ask me. Like, the way they deconstruct genre in Rick and Morty is so enjoyably smart. Particularly this season, the episode 3, the heist episode, is fantastic.
And you're watching that on E4, right?
E4, yeah.
And then another honourable mention for me is Stranger Things. I'm not a lover of Stranger Things, but what I love is zeitgeist moments. So I like watching Stranger Things because everyone's talking about it. Again, we've already done a huge episode on it on our Patreon, but there's elements of it I liked. For me, it wasn't amazing, and I'm totally kind of done with it now. But at the same time, you can't help but watch Stranger Things and find.
You said you were done with it in season 2.
I know, but like I kind of came back to it again. But it's one of those shows that, despite grumbling about it and kind of moaning a bit as I watch it, there are certain set pieces that are brilliant. You know, the kids are all great, and it's just nice to watch event TV that you know everyone else is watching.
Good. I've got one. which I've only seen one episode of, but you saw pretty much the whole thing. Black Monday with Don Cheadle.
Oh my god, I completely forgot about Black Monday. I love Black Monday.
Yeah, it's really good. I've only seen one episode, comedy. But it was brilliant, and I just haven't had time to go back and catch up.
I think that was Showtime as well, but we watched it on Atlantic. Oh, absolutely wonderful. Completely recommend Black Monday. It's very funny. It's about a Wall Street crash in the 80s, starring Don Cheadle as a Wall Street trader. And it's very surreal and very funny, and I completely recommend that one.
Yeah, it's hilarious just from that one episode I saw. What's next? You go next.
What I have next is This Way Up. Could have made my top 5, but unfortunately I haven't finished it.
What's that?
It's the Aisling B comedy. The stars Aisling B,
and
she wrote it, and Sharon Horgan's also in it. So it's such a good year for female comedy, by the way.
Good year for Aisling B as well. She was in the Paul Rudd thing.
Yeah, great year for her. Great year for Sharon Horgan. Great year for female comedy. Really enjoyed what I saw of This Way Up, but I just haven't finished it yet. And it's about Aisling B, and she's a woman in her 30s navigating life in London, and she has suffered some from mental health problems, and she's trying to get her life back together, and Sharon Horgan plays her sister. And yeah, really loved this one.
Good, I need to watch that. You've just reminded me of another one that I forgot about. Upright, the Tim Minchin Australian road show.
Yes, but we've only seen 2 episodes. We can't really judge it, but the 2 episodes were great.
Very, very good.
Which we watch on Sky Atlantic.
Would recommend guys giving it a go. Next one for me is the latest season of Black Mirror. We watched this year, season 5, I believe.
Oh, well, I'll tell you now, that's on my disappointment list.
Okay, well, we'll talk about that later then.
No, we can talk about it now.
Go on then.
No, you go.
Mixed bag. I think Black Mirror is often a mixed bag, but a few cracking episodes. In particular, the video game one with your man who plays Falcon in Avengers, whatever his name is. I've forgotten it.
I don't know what you're talking about.
That was
the video game episode. Yeah, sorry.
I don't want to say what it's about because we're not going to spoil anything. Anyway, that's definitely worth a watch. The others were kind of a mixed bag, but it's just I just like having this show. It's always fun, and you talked about sort of zeitgeist moments. It's fun when new Black Mirror drops, and you get to and you don't know what you're going to experience every time. And I love just guessing along with it. The Miley Cyrus one was really bad.
Really bad, yeah.
But anyway, sorry, go on.
And on my honourable mentions list though is Bandersnatch, but I don't know if it came out at the very end of last year or the very start of this
Good
year.
Question.
But Bandersnatch was truly a wonderful experience. Like, we were so excited when we sat down and played this, find your own ending. I can't remember.
It was a lot of fun.
What that genre is called. I used to love those books as a kid though. And
Choose Your Own Adventure.
Choose Your Own Adventure. Honestly, hats off. I listened to Charlie Brooker, who created it, talking about it on the Script Notes podcast, which is hosted by Craig Mason of Chernobyl fame.
And he was on Desert Island Discs this year. Really good.
Podcast is so inbred, but the work that went into plotting these various strands and following each one to its nth degree is truly spectacular. Hats off to Bandersnatch. That was incredible.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. A big year for Will Poulter as well. He was great in that, and he showed up in Midsommar as well and was deliciously horrible.
What else is on your honourable mentions?
My next one is The Dragon Prince. It's an animated show from some alumni of Avatar: The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra, which are 2 of my favourite animated shows of all times. I have so many animations on this thing.
You have so many animations, and I have so many female-led comedies.
Yeah,
I'm sensing a theme
sums us
here.
up. I think I just love animated movies and TV more than anything. I think
it's because they're a safe and cheap space for people to make fantasy and sci-fi.
Oh no, I see what you mean.
Compared to like live action's too expensive for those shows.
And also that's why I love this stuff so much. Your imagination isn't limited by anything. It's not limited by the constraints of reality or necessarily budgets. Anyway, The Dragon Prince is a lot of fun. Yeah, fantasy, Netflix exclusive show. If you like any of those things I just mentioned, give this a go. We've got so many to go. Let's keep going.
We have so many to
Breakneck speed.
Honourable mention for me is State of the Union, which was a 10-part series that aired on the BBC here, starring Rosamund Pike and Chris O'Dowd.
That was good.
That was really good. And each episode is only 10 minutes long, which is like absolute music to my ears, and I'm sure for most people. And it's basically just about a couple going through marriage counselling, and you follow that over 10 episodes, and it's so funny. They're both brilliant, and I absolutely loved it, and I've recommended it to everyone I know. It didn't make my top 5 because, you know, as we said, the top 5 is too difficult to do. But what I would say, this is a lovely, snackable, gorgeous show to just watch.
It's like watching a play.
And it's great, you know, and like a lot of these shows, like as much as we like them, like Watchmen, for example, when you wanted to watch an episode of Watchmen, they're long and you have to kind of put the time aside and like really focus on it. And what I loved about State of the Union was like how snackable it was.
Yeah, I think it's really clever. I'd like more people to do that.
Yeah.
I've got another animated show here. I seem to have loads of these. This was also on Netflix. Love, Death and Robots. It was a collection of
I watched one of those.
Animated, yeah, which was you quite enjoyed that, I think. It's a collection of animated short movies, essentially, that are kind of all of a variety of adaptations of short science fiction novels or original content, but they all are linked together by either love, death or robots, and there's a lot of robot stuff in here. There's a few of these are really, really good, others are not so great, little bit like what you get with Black Mirror, but the animation styles vary from thing to thing, so I always enjoyed looking at a brand new animation style and a brand new story. Some of the stories are a bit weak, some of them are actually quite misogynistic. David Fincher's kind of behind this, but for me it was a really fun thing to plough through.
You just said some of them are misogynistic.
Yeah, undeniably misogynistic, if you ask me. They're very much like, some of them are just like 13-year-old schoolboy levels of and unnecessary nudity. I think there's one or two had very troubling depictions of you asked me about this, don't give me the windy finger. Anyway, you can read up on the controversy or troublesome politics around a couple of these things, and I'm not forgiving it for that, but I think in terms of original storytelling and animation styles, there's a lot of interesting variety on display here.
Okay, I'm done with honourable mentions. Have you got any more?
Oh my god, so many. I watched too much TV this year.
Wait, yeah, but you don't need to just talk about every single TV show you've seen.
But I love them all.
Cull some of them as you're talking.
No, let me go. Here we go. I'm going to race through these. Okay, I Think You Should Leave is a brilliant and mad sketch show. I've never seen anything like it. That's also on Netflix. Tuca and Bertie, R.I.P. This show. It had one amazing season. From one of the head animators and writers from BoJack Horseman, made her own show with Netflix with two of the most wonderful female characters I've ever seen. Essentially about two females in their 30s living together, and it's a beautiful, lovely show that built to a really emotionally satisfying end of season that made me want more, and it has been cancelled. So F you, Netflix, in this regard. Stop making new shows. Make the ones that you have that are already good.
Yeah, but they released their stats this year on their top performing shows, and all their top performing shows, I believe, were season 1 new stuff.
Oh, really?
Returning stuff was all in
just
the
want
play.
new stuff.
But Tuca and Bertie was new this year, so the fact that they've canned it already tells me they probably know.
I guess it didn't find an audience, and it was weird and wacky, and you tried to get into it and couldn't, so I get it. Netflix made a lot of stuff, because they also did The Umbrella Academy, which is a adaptation of a graphic novel that I love. Give that a look if you like. Sort of, it's a weird take on superhero things. Line of Duty season 5 came out this year.
Oh, that's in my disappointment list.
Okay, let's talk about that when we get to that.
No, we can talk about it now if you want.
Sure. We did a full episode of this over on our Patreon as well. We're big Line of Duty fans. Such a good show by Jed Mercurio. Really tense police drama in which all of the tension is drawn from people in an interrogation room sitting across from each other, and it's basically, if you don't know what this is, it's internal affairs in a unacknowledged part of the UK. Steve, the thing this show is most famous for is having an incredible guest star every season, who's kind of the case of the season, so to speak. This year was Stephen Graham, who is one of the best actors working today, and is also having an amazing year. He was in The Irishman, and The Venture. The Ventures, is it?
I don't know.
Which we haven't seen, which is supposed to be amazing.
But yeah, this ended up on my disappointment list, not because I think it's a bad show, because I still think it's one of the best shows on TV, but because it just didn't, like, the last season, the Thandie Newton season, was so great, and my expectations at this point were just way too high for this show. And in particular, and most people did agree with this, it was the general consensus, the last couple of episodes were problematic, albeit it was off to a great start. I think the show was really missing a bad villain this year. R.I.P. the Cathy, missed him. It just, for me, it lost the run of itself by the end of it, and I think they'd have to work hard now to impress me next season.
It did get very ridiculous by the end, and sort of is retreating up its own arse.
Yeah, they lost the core of what makes it a good show, frankly. So I'm hoping that... I mean, I actually don't know how they can... and again, we're not going to spoil it, so head over to Patreon if you want to hear our big spoiler review on it. But I don't even know if they can undo some of the silliness at the end of this. It just became silly. Yeah,
the show is becoming too in love with its own overarching plot, which is not interesting enough for me. It's falling into absurdity.
Yeah.
However, as a season of television with incredible actors and storytelling, you can't get much better than Line of Duty.
No.
Couple more. You've already talked about Veep, but I thought that was amazing final season. Sex Education, we still haven't finished that first season, but it was a really good and interesting show, also on Netflix.
It was good, but then after a couple of episodes, remember, we found it really repetitive, sorry.
Yes, but we didn't give it a full chance, I don't think. And I'd like to go back. Season 2's coming out. Escape at Dannemora, we talked about. What We Do in the Shadows, one of my favourite movies of all time, about a mockumentary about vampires, was brought to TV, also by Taiki Waititi.
On BBC, right?
It's on BBC here and FX in the States. 10 episodes. Matt Berry is in it, who's just wonderful, about a load of vampires living in New Jersey. It took a couple of episodes to get going. It had the Office problem, where the Office US problem, where they were kind of saddled with trying to do replicating the same thing in the first 2 episodes, but then when it finds its feet, it's really, really good. Highly recommend. And then lastly, I've left this one till last on my list because I have a feeling it's on your disappointment list. Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, top of my most disappointing list.
Not on my disappointment list. It's on my honourable mentions.
Okay, but it's a straddle, I think. Game of Thrones, we put a lot of energy into this year because we reviewed every single episode over on Patreon in excruciating detail. And for all the work we put into it and all the hours we talked about it, honestly, I can barely remember it now because it was so disappointing and it was so rushed. And I think rushed is the number one way I can describe how this season ended. It went by in an absolute blur at the end, and characters completely changed, personalities, and time kind of had no meaning, and they undid so much of what they'd done in previous series. And like, I say this as someone who's actually not the biggest Game of Thrones fan in the world. I always enjoyed it, haven't even seen it all, but I've seen at least the last 4 or 5 seasons. And it was just like they were like sick of making it and wanted to go on and make something else. That's frankly how it felt as a viewer, and I don't in any way condone the trolling the creators of the show got, and I think the reaction was really over the top from people. But I do understand why people did feel let down, because if a show has spent seasons of building up a certain way of constructing narrative and time and characters, to throw a lot of that away in the final season, it feels like laziness. And like, you go from seasons where time passes like at a glacial pace to like months have passed in a minute, and the pacing was just off. So for me, that's why it went into disappointment. I didn't mind the last episode and don't mind how it ended. I know lots of people did. I really
What?
Don't. As in, I don't care how it ended, but what I care about is that the process changed in the storytelling, and that's what cheapened it for me.
I don't agree with you. I feel differently. I think that the end was incredibly disappointing. Like, the very last episode is honestly one of the worst bits of TV I saw this
I didn't
year.
think it was great. I'm just saying I didn't hate it.
It was
the way
terribly
people...
written. It was nonsensical.
It
It was cheesy and saccharine, and I laughed at how they wrapped this whole thing up. It was
I don't mind
terrible.
cheesy, but they got there too many shortcuts.
It was terrible. However, it's not on my disappointment list as a season, because I think as a whole season of television, they botched that last episode, and they botched a big character making a sort of a decision that nobody bought because they hadn't done enough of the groundwork, and I kind of agree with that. But besides those two things, I think unfortunately the very end of this show has overshadowed the show now for a lot of people, and it definitely overshadowed this season, because people were no longer paying attention to the incredible achievement that it was the first four or five episodes of this season. We got some of the best character work we've ever had at the beginning. There's one whole episode which is just in preparation for a battle, and every character we know is together. That's one of the best episodes of Game of Thrones, if you ask me. The battles themselves were for the most part incredibly well executed and brought to life. So still some of the most amazing televisual moments in history, if you ask me. And I think this show from beginning to end has been an incredible journey that I've loved being on. I thought the end was absolute dog shit, but I'm not going to let that affect how I feel about the show as a whole, and I don't think other people will. And I think people should. I don't think other people should. Sorry, but I actually think this show will, in 6 months, a year, and in a few years, will be reflected a little kinder. And I think
do you think so? Because with shows like other big shows like The Sopranos or
Lost had a much maligned ending,
and I'm talking about ones that have good endings like The Sopranos and Breaking Bad, right? Like kind of universally acclaimed endings that like sealed the deal and put these shows in the vault of the best shows ever. And then you've got your Lost and your Game of Thrones. And I honestly think, like you said, Watchmen lost a spot on your list because of the end. A bad ending. And Watchmen, by the way, was not a bad ending.
Watchmen had a great ending. It just wasn't
when something
perfect.
doesn't have the ending that you don't think is right, there's no way it doesn't influence someone's opinion. Particularly if you're recommending a new series to someone, because if you like Dexter, right? Absolutely one of my favorite shows of all time.
That's one of the worst endings in history.
It's one of the worst endings ever. And I had to say, but now when I recommend people watch Dexter, I'm like, watch up to, I think it was season 3 with John Lithgow.
No,
then stop.
But that's different. Yeah, but that's different because Dexter had been going downhill for seasons.
Yeah,
absolute seasons.
I know. I'm just saying a bad ending can kill a show.
This went rotten with an episode to go. I'm not saying it's satisfying. It isn't a satisfying ending, but the actual journey is fine. It's not fine, it's amazing.
But anyway, we've talked enough about Game of Thrones this year. I can't talk about it anymore.
No. All right, I'm done. Okay. Wow, there's a lot of good TV this year.
Wow, there's a lot of good TV, though funnily 2 of yours ended up on my most disappointing.
All right, well, give us the rest of your disappointments this year.
Great British Bake Off.
Oh yeah, that was disappointing.
It's just, and it's through nobody's fault. It's the same format it always was.
It's a bit boring, wasn't it?
I think it's just been going on too long. And one of the key things I thought this season was they didn't get the casting right. We ended up with like 3 people who were exactly the same age and exactly the same race in the finale. And what I always loved of it was how different all the characters were, and I love that you'd have like really young people and really old people and people of different ethnicity, and there was some of that in this season, and it's not the only reason I found it dull, but they were all the characters were too samey for me. I've been such a big Bake Off fan, and I've watched so many different iterations of it. Like when we lived in Australia, I absolutely loved the Australian one, for example. But there's just it's just run its course now, and I think it's going to turn into an X Factor. You know, in like 5 years' time, we're going to turn on TV and go, "Oh my god, Great British Bake Off is still on. What's happening? Why is Paula Hollywood earning £5 billion a year to present this?" So yeah, that's on my disappointment list. What else have you got?
I've got Dark season 2.
Oh, that's on my list too.
Yeah, I think we both agree on this. So this is another. My God, I watch a lot of Netflix, I'm realising.
Yeah, the more we talk, I'm like, oh, we are getting value from our Netflix subscription, because it's one of those things every now and then you go, should we cancel it?
Yeah, my God, I'm watching loads of stuff. Dark season 2.
But we tend to binge, so we'll binge something on Netflix and then not watch it for ages, so we kind of forget.
That's the best way to use Netflix, I think. You go in for something that you want to watch or that has been recommended.
Yeah, I hate browsing.
It's a horrible system to browse. Anyway, Dark is a German sci-fi mystery show on Netflix, which is a sort of twisty time travel thing.
And we were obsessed with season 1. We probably recommended it last year.
And I still would recommend season 1. As in, similar to Game of Thrones, if you can know that it's not going to end in a satisfying way, and just take that as one series of television, you'll get a lot out of that series. And season 2 has some good stuff to offer, but it's just kind of a little like we were saying about Line of Duty. It's become too obsessed with its own overarching plot, and it's starting to wrap itself up in knots.
It was it was indecipherable.
It's too convoluted now.
But we finished season 2, but I categorically now, and I know I say this a lot, I am not coming back for a season 2.
Same. I think I'm done. It's just a really disappointing way for that show to go.
Okay, so next on my disappointment list, I have got Dublin Murders, which was a BBC/RTE production, and again, like, not a bad TV show, but I'm just obsessed with the books they're based on, and I'm doing that annoying thing of going, the books are better than the TV show, but the books are really better than the TV show. So while the TV show was well made, well acted, it just did not capture the essence of the books. The books are very atmospheric and very twisty and brilliant. So I actually just recommend anyone who, if whether or not you like the Dublin Murders or not, go and read the books by Tana French, because they're brilliant and I love them.
Good. The next one for me is Stranger Things season 3, which you've covered off. I thought season 2 of this show was really, really bad. I really loved season 1. Felt like a tight, interesting mystery. Season 2, much like again, back to Dark, it's something that I wish had just moved on and done a new story. I don't care about the upside down anymore.
I know. So I wish they'd done it. What I wish they'd done is, like those anthology seasons like American Horror Story, where they take the same cast but do a completely different story.
Something like that.
Because the cast are brilliant.
Or take the same characters and give them a new story. Like something else happens this weird town. Like, just, I don't care about there's no big bad. Whatever the big bad is in season 2 and 3, it's just like some faceless villain. It's boring. Anyway, so I'm not interested in the mythology of Stranger Things, I'm afraid. I think the characters are still a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun to be had in this. Season 3 was better than season 2 for me in that it was less of a drag.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. Certainly was fluffy 80s nostalgia entertainment. It's set in a mall, so there's a lot more to enjoy. So there's a great performance in particular from the actor that plays Billy, the Australian actor whose name I forget. The
yeah,
brother.
He's great. Well, one of the big problems, and again we've already discussed the show to death on Patreon, but one of the big problems was there was just way too many characters. Like, there was like whole characters who had literally had nothing to do in the season. Yeah. They're just literally there to drive the kids around in cars. I just think, yeah, exactly. Are we talking about Nancy and and man? This show is a victim of its own success, I think, and it's just diminishing returns for me. What's next for you? That's it. I'm done with disappointments.
All right, I've got 2 more. First one is Star Trek Discovery, which is a show that I was hungrily eating up week to week, but just got kind of... as it progressed, the season 2 just got kind of worse and worse and more ridiculous, and then just ended in basically a bit like the latest Star Wars movie, just this like clusterfuck of CG effects on screen and hundreds of thousands of ships and droids and automated things, and I was just like, this isn't Star Trek. What have you done? You've just turned it into a terrible... Yeah, it's confused bigger for better.
It also doesn't quite work, that stuff on TV the way it does in cinema. Like,
no,
it's not really...
And also the show was barreling along at such a breakneck speed that there was it didn't give you enough time to stop and reflect on the plot holes and absurdity of what was being suggested. Very disappointing overall looking back at it, which is a shame because I think season 1 was actually very good for the most part and had a really satisfying twist and emotional and payoff. I probably will come back for it for season 3 because they just tagged on a brilliant cliffhanger ending which is going to push the thing along, but disappointing overall. And my last one is The Good Place season 4, which I got 4 episodes in and just had to give up on. I thought it's
sad for you because you used to love it so much.
It is sad. It's a show that again is not diminished by this terrible last 2 seasons. Season 1 of 2 of this show are brilliant and I would recommend them to anybody. 3's got some good bits, but 4 now they've just it's the final season, but they've kind of just tried to reboot the thing a bit, but it's just becoming tired. The jokes are still strong. Finishing it soon,
aren't they?
This is the last season.
Yeah.
The jokes
you should tune in for the last episode.
Maybe the jokes are still strong. Like the writer's room in this are very good, but it's the plot. They're a victim of they constantly push the boundaries of this show and completely will change the whole premise of a show, and they've done it a few times now, which is very interesting and fresh, but then they kind of don't ever know where to go from there, so they just end up doing it again, which does wear thin after a while.
4 seasons in. Okay, so we're done with disappointments. Now we've got one category left, guilty pleasure.
Yeah, I don't have any. I didn't feel guilty about watching anything. I only watched TV that were just genuine pleasures for me.
Or that you stopped watching. Well, I've got one, and the theme song goes, "You're not gonna tempt me."
Is it Temptation Island?
Temptation Island. Oh dear God!
I started watching season 2 of this with you the other night. It's really fun.
It is a guilty pleasure, right? It's the epitome of a guilty pleasure.
For sure, because I felt dirty after it.
So for anyone who doesn't know what Temptation Island is, a show that used to be made a long time ago, and at one point I think Sky a decade ago made a version of it in England, but E have remade it in the last year in the States. So season 1 of the reboot came out earlier this year, and season 2 just dropped on E. It's awful, really. I shouldn't even be talking about it. They take 4 couples who are at an impasse in their relationship and just really want to explore how their relationship's going and hopefully realize how much they love each other, and they put the 4 women in a house with a load of men, and they put the 4 men in a house with a load of women, and then they just basically all get tempted, and it's how soon will one of them shag someone else? And
it's a nasty premise.
It's a nasty premise, and it's fascinating TV because these people know, why are they on the show? And this, as you get to know each relationship, there's one person in each relationship who's pushed to go on the show, right? Generally the one who ends up cheating. And then the other poor schmuck in the relationship goes along because what they're hoping is that their partner will not cheat on them and realise they love them and will propose to them, and it's this
but why would anyone think that this is a good idea?
That did happen at the end of the first season. Somebody did not cheat.
They came out of it stronger than ever.
Nothing makes you sstronger than going
but I'm sorry, in what element of real life relationships do people think that I need to know if that person really loves me, I need them to be tempted by a lot of women?
I guess people do. I mean, look, honestly, it would make no difference to me because when I go out, I've at least 20 men trying it on every time they see me, so I don't need to go on Temptation Island. But honestly,
humble brag.
I'm joking. I never go out. But honestly, it's compelling, and I'm ashamed to say I watched 8 episodes in one day.
Oh my God!
When I was sick, they're not even 40 minutes, right? You think of all the ads that are on E, and as you saw the other night, we nearly put on a 3rd episode. We stopped ourselves. Every episode ends on a cliffhanger.
Oh my God, it's so easy to watch.
So
but
anyway,
also the way you watch reality TV in a very clever way, in which you fast forward
the boring bits.
Kathy knows. Kathy's obsessed with The Bachelor, FYI. And I've watched the way Cathy watches The Bachelor. She knows the format so well because it's on season 28 or whatever, that she just it's as soon as someone starts talking about something, she'll skip. She knows when that boring conversation is going to make. It's almost like you could produce a season of The Bachelor.
I could make Temptation Island,
yeah.
and I would gladly make it. But anyway, guilty pleasure, Temptation Island. Honestly, if you're looking for a binge, go for it.
All right, we put the call out on Twitter and on our Patreon for what you thought were the best and worst TV shows of the year, and we got such a big response. So we'll go through as many of these as we can. At Delta Sphere 41 said The Boys, bloody brilliant, bloody splattery, brilliant.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, it's an Amazon Prime exclusive based on a Garth Ennis comic. I've been meaning to see this, actually, starring Carl Urban. It's about people who murder superheroes.
Ooh, okay.
Essentially. Looks really interesting. And they also recommended The Handmaid's Tale, appalling and inspirational, they said. We watched some of the first season we need to go back.
And then Gold's Gone Wild recommended Watchmen and Chernobyl were the highlights for me. Very different but both superb. Highly recommend the HBO podcast for both as well.
See, we're not the only one talking about these podcasts. At Kinza Leah said Succession Season 2, such a highlight. Every episode was a witty masterpiece. I can't wait to rewatch it. L to the OG.
And she's got a great gif in there. Lee Thomas, Chernobyl best for me. Enjoyed Catch 22. I never watched that one, but meant to. Mindhunter Season 2, Dark Season 2, Russian Doll.
Oh, Russian Doll is
also meant to watch.
Need to watch.
True Detective Season 3 on the list. Forgot to watch it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be good, that. My God, there's just too much stuff. Phil Fort at Phil 4T 1886. Struggling with lows, but my highs would be When They See Us. Oh my God,
yes,
this is me talking. Need to watch that. Which was a very tough watch, but really amazing work from Ava DuVernay. Fleabag was also incredible. Best comedy for me. I caught up with Pose this year, which has some great performances. What's Pose?
Pose is on my list. So I believe it's about the drag scene in New York. Don't quote me on that, but it's apparently amazing, and it's also made by Ryan of American Horror Story.
Oh yeah, Ryan, Irish name. Anyway,
God, I can't remember his name. Ryan Murphy. Yeah.
Right.
Then AJ Black at AJ Black Writer, Watchmen, Fleabag, and Chernobyl. I'm sensing a theme here. Watchmen in particular is a masterpiece. I'd say on the other end of the spectrum was probably Veronica Mars.
V-Wars, he said.
Oh,
I don't know why you read that.
I wanted to watch
Veronica Mars.
They brought out a new Veronica Mars.
Yeah,
this
we
year.
didn't watch that.
So he's saying V Mars, which I've never heard.
No, V Wars.
V Wars.
It's about vampires fighting,
which was ridiculous. Tosh of the highest order.
Arthur Hamer. Hey, Arthur. Arthur made our logo and our lovely illustrations for the cinema.
We love your work, Arthur.
Arthur said Chernobyl, The Mandalorian, which we can't watch here yet, unfortunately, coming out on Disney Plus soon. But we know Baby Yoda's in it. Line of Duty, Fleabag, The Witcher, and definitely not Game of Thrones. I'm quite interested to see The Witcher, actually. New Netflix show. I'm obsessed with those video games. Looks a bit crap though, but hey, I'll give it a chance.
And then Make a Scene Film Club said Succession. Oh, and Fosse Verdon, which we also didn't watch. Verdon? That was the one that starred Michelle Williams, and I believe it was like maybe set in the 20s, and it was about a dancer, but do not quote me on that.
Liam H. Dempsey said my favourites this year, The Virtues. Me talking now. That's the Stephen Graham one I was talking about earlier. Want to see that. Fleabag, Stranger Things, Mortimer and Whitehouse, Gone Fishing. I don't know what that is.
Don't know.
Mum.
Oh, I've heard good things about Mum.
And Catastrophe.
Great taste, Liam.
What's Mum?
It was on one of the British terrestrials, and it's a comedy that's apparently really good. And then Fee Hamilton, seasons 2 of Pose, season 2 of Glow.
Oh, Glow I want to watch.
Yes, the final season of Orange Is the New Black were definite highlights. Also loved This Way Up by Aisling B. And thought A Christmas Carol was a pleasant surprise in the different angle it took. That's really interesting. We saw there was a Christmas Carol and we went, another one? So it's good to know they did something different with
angle.
Intriguing.
Jim Bob Squarepants at Vintage GT says Chernobyl, Watchmen, When They See Us, Fleabag, and The Boys. All brilliant. That's a good list. Seen all of them except The Boys.
And Mark Monger said just finished binging both seasons of Dark, can't wait until season 3. Ooh, interesting. So he liked season 2 more than us. And Living With Yourself was good too, which is the Paul Rudd Aisling B thing we mentioned.
That was
Netflix.
good. We watched a couple of episodes.
Yeah, we just haven't finished it.
It's one of those ones we just sort of fell out of touch with, but must go back and finish. Peter Harrison at Slow and Quiet said The OA is the best TV show since Lost, better in many ways, easily the best of the year. Chernobyl excellent. The Irishman is an outstanding film, a true classic. We didn't ask for films, but thanks, Peter.
Well, yeah, it is on Netflix though, and people watch it in chunks, episodic chunks.
This is true. There is actually somebody gave the time codes for how you could watch it as a 6-part series.
So maybe that's how Peter did it.
So much more than a gangster film, he says. The OA is something we watched the first 1 or 2 episodes of season 1 years ago, and I gotta say, I thought it was one of the worst things I've ever seen, and I hated it.
Yeah, but we have not watched it all.
But that's got a big fan base.
Yeah, so
people
don't
love
trash it till you watch it all.
But I actually love Lost, so maybe I should give it another go.
And then Easy Rider's Raging Podcast, friend of the pod, said Chernobyl was a clear standout for me this year. Engaging, horrific, funny, moving and timely. It had it all. It's a great synopsis.
Ivan Clark at Wobbly Clark said, me Julie's choices.
Me and at Julie Ballew's choices.
But he said me Julie, so I think it's an Ali G reference. His Julie has chosen RuPaul UK.
Oh yeah, we loved that.
We loved that.
That was really fun. That should have been on our honourable mentions.
Oh yeah,
I just forgot.
Years and Years.
Oh, that's on my list, but I haven't seen it.
That's supposed to be
Star's
good.
my number one
Russell
crush.
Tovey.
Yeah.
Me, Thatcher, A Very British Revolution. I don't know if that's 1 show or 3 shows.
Thatcher, Very British Revolution was like a factual series that ran, which was supposed to be brilliant.
Spotlight on the Troubles, Northern Ireland. Match of the Day. Can Match of the Day count?
When West Ham won.
We are the wrong people to read this out.
Charlie at We Done Charlotte said highs, pose, Fleabag and Glow, lows, Stranger Things, Game of Thrones. Charlie, you're working off my disappointment list here.
And then Laura Dowd over on our Patreon said the best has to be Succession, followed closely by Fleabag's season 2. 2 shows that really know their characters well and are tightly run. Worst is Game of Thrones. It had already gone off the boil, but they focused too much on battle spectacles in the final season and not enough on the character development and pacing of the plot, like you said.
Graham said, I don't watch a lot of television, so don't feel qualified to comment. But then he did comment, which I like, because we like commenting on things we're not qualified on. But I did binge watch Chernobyl when I was home with the flu. I wouldn't advise it. Great series. I'm sorry, I'm saying I wouldn't advise it. Now back to Graham. Great series for when you feel like you have the end of the world virus. Also best television I've seen in a long time.
And lastly, Tom George said on our Patreon, I think there were 3 standout TV shows this year: Chernobyl, Watchmen and season 2 of Succession.
Ooh, your top 3.
That's my top 3.
Nice.
Agree with you, Tom. We
just love people agreeing with us, basically.
I just love when I get my own opinions bounced back to me. They were all pretty much flawless. Succession is so well made and the cast feel like a real family. The scenes between them all feel stressful and almost claustrophobic, but in a good way. Sadly, we thought the worst was Line of Duty. The new season just felt like a bit of a mess. We gave it a few episodes, but too many cheesy lines and obvious twists stopped us watching.
But he didn't finish it. He never found out who H was. And I don't think... Did any of us? I can't remember.
I don't think we did either.
Thanks so much, guys. That's an amazing response. And I'm so sorry if we missed anyone, because we got so many. It was kind of hard to collate them all.
Yeah, there were more. But thanks to everyone who wrote in. Thanks for everyone who has listened this year to this podcast. We really do appreciate it. We love talking to you guys.
Just keep messaging us. We love people's recommendations because we actually always follow them. Like if somebody's recommending something, we'll try our best to watch it because we trust you guys' taste.
Yes. And my God, we love talking about TV. Look how much there has been this year.
It's like definitely been
hard to get through all that.
Better year for TV than a year for film, for sure.
For sure. Like undeniably. Mm-hmm. All right. If you haven't listened to our best films of the year episode, that's also available now. If it's your first time listening to the show, please do subscribe. And if you wouldn't mind giving us a quick review, that would be lovely as well over on iTunes
that
or
would be
wherever.
Amazing. That actually could just be your Christmas gift to us. All we want for Christmas is an iTunes review.
That's the famous Mariah Carey line.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Right. Happy New Year.
Bye.
Bye.